NVidia have just had their earnings call for Q2, and things have never looked so grim for the company. With revenue down 19% from last quarter, Jensen Huang and company are taking extreme measures to stop the bleeding. Can NVIDIA afford to delay the 4090 launch, as some rumors suggest? Is there another way out of the hole NVIDIA have dug for themselves with their focus on crypto in the last couple of years? Well, one thing's for sure, this will give AMD the opportunity to make 2022 the best year in their history, ending it ahead of both rivals Intel and NVIDIA in almost every way. Today's video is sponsored by urcdkeys.com. If you buy a retail Windows 10 key, you will probably spend $100 or more. But if you buy an OEM key using a service like URCD Keys, it will be less than $15 after you use the coupon code C25. The keys work globally, and if you want Windows 11, what I recommend you do is just buy Windows 10 and get a free upgrade while you can. Personally, I use Windows 10 Pro. Once you've made your purchase, using a variety of different payment options available, you will instantly find the key in your purchased orders on the website. Click Get Keys and copy the key. Then, after you've installed Windows 10 Pro, of course, in Windows press Start and type in Activate and click on Activation Settings. Then click Change Product Key, paste in the code and click Next. That's it. Quick and easy, and your Windows is now activated. If you need Office 2021 Professional, you can use the same 25% discount code C25 and get it for just $59.98. Since you're over there, check out the back-to-school sale of 50% off of PC peripherals like gaming mice, chairs, headsets, and a slew of cool-looking mechanical keyboards. Thank you to URCD Keys for sponsoring today's video. Click the links in the video description to get your OEM Windows keys today. NVIDIA's earnings call started with the confirmation of what we had already heard a couple of weeks ago in their pre-announcement, with revenue for this quarter down 19% compared to the last one and down 3% from the same period last year. The company was $1.4 billion short of estimates from the last call. Gaming alone was down 44% from last quarter and 33% from the same period last year due to what NVIDIA calls challenging market conditions. They again failed to acknowledge that their massive growth in the last couple of years was wholly tied to crypto miners' hunger for GPUs capable of mining Ethereum profitably. The saving grace for NVIDIA was the massive growth in the data center, which grew 1% from last quarter, but a massive 61% from the same period last year, generating $3.81 billion in revenue this last quarter. This makes sense as more and more hyperscalers and cloud clients transition from doing inference on CPUs to GPUs for things like recommender systems and AI applications like language processing, image recognition, etc. I think this will continue to be an area of growth for NVIDIA and could sustain the company through these rough times, but it's not a never-ending source of money. There will be better and cheaper options than GPUs in the coming years for these types of workloads, and there are a lot of companies out there out to eat NVIDIA's lunch in this growing market, not just Intel and AMD. On top of that, there's a general consensus that capex on the data center will also be correcting, meaning companies will enter a cycle of less spending on data center hardware in the coming quarters. Back to gaming, NVIDIA's outlook for next quarter doesn't look any better. We expect gaming and pro visualization revenue to decline sequentially as OEMs and channel partners reduce inventory levels to align with current levels of demand and prepare for our new product generation. NVIDIA is estimating revenue for the next quarter to be $5.9 billion, and more interestingly, gross margins to be between 62.4% and 65%. So note that NVIDIA is projecting a possible drop in margins of 2.5% in a period where they are launching a new generation of GPUs. Assuming the 4090 will be available in October, to me this suggests that pricing for it will either remain the same or see a very small increase compared to the 3090 launch price. We will go through my predictions for price pricing later in the video. Here's what Jensen Huang had to say regarding the upcoming RTX 4090. We do have an exciting new next generation coming, and it's going to be layered on top of Ampere. We've reduced sell-in to let channel inventory correct, and we've implemented programs with our partners to price position the products in the channel in preparation for our next generation. So my interpretation of this is that only the 4090 will launch this year, as Jensen says it will coexist with the 3000 series until they empty inventory. Or at least that's what Jensen wants the market to think. So a 4080 and a 4070 would be competing directly with the 3090 and 3090 Ti, which means they won't launch probably until Q1 next year. At least that's what I take away from what Jensen is saying here. NVidia has put in place discount programs with AIBs to make sure the 3000 series will sell, so you can expect further price reductions there. My recommendation would be to just get the 3000s on the second-hand market and not reward NVIDIA's focus on crypto miners for the last couple of years. Also, remember when Jace2Sense said that you were an idiot if you didn't buy a 3090 Ti from EVGA a few weeks ago, saying prices were the lowest they would ever be, and that the 4090 could be delayed for another year? Let me ask you, are you subscribed to any other fake news for idiots sources or just Jay's channel? I think it's time you update your subscriptions with channels that don't lie to your face, like Cortex, and unsubscribe from trash that costs thousands of gullible gamers a ton of money just to push corporate agendas. Just my own 2 cents on the sorry state of tech influencers today. Anyway, now that you've updated your subscriptions, Jensen had some more to add regarding their gaming strategy. The overall trend long-term, the ASP of gaming GPUs is drifting up. We've always believed that the ASP of GeForce should drift toward the average selling price of a game console, so it should be something along the lines of $500 or roughly at this time. If we calculate the ASP for Ampere, it comes out at $819. There are a few things in there that could skew the numbers, like the 3080 12GB, which didn't really have a launch price, but roughly speaking, the entire Ampere lineup had an ASP way above $500. Now, Jensen could be referring to an ASP that takes into account volume, where something like a 4060 or a 4070 would make up the bulk of sales. Looking at the latest Steam hardware survey, we see that as far as Ampere discrete GPUs are concerned, the 3060, 3070, and 3080 had the largest share, with the 3050 having only 1.38% of the market. If we average the 3 most popular Ampere GPUs, we get an ASP of $509. So that lines up with what Jensen was saying. Again, this indicates to me that pricing for the 4000 series will remain identical to the 3000 series launch prices, maybe with a very slight increase. In the closing remarks for the quarterly call, Jensen hinted that the 4090 will be revealed at GTC next month. GTC is on September 19th to the 22nd, so I'm expecting the 4090 to be released a month after, towards the end of October. I could see NVIDIA delaying the launch by another month to November if inventory is still not in check. Probably no further than that, as AMD will have their own next-gen GPUs out very soon. So the positive takeaways here are that, unlike some doom and gloom predictions a while back, NVIDIA's GPUs will remain overpriced, but not by the exorbitant amounts that people were suggesting. The 4090 will be announced next month, and it's always exciting to have a new GPU launch. And because of the crypto crash, NVIDIA has confirmed further price cuts for the current gen. So for those of you looking to buy a 3000 series GPUs, either new or on the used market, the next couple of months should see 3090s dropping to incredibly low prices. And I don't think you'll see a huge difference in performance going from a 3090 to a 4090, unless you are pushing 4K at Ultra with ray tracing on. What I mean by that is a performance uplift that you would actually notice in most games, seeing as the 3090 is already incredibly fast. To me, there's some play here from Jensen, making it sound like the 4090 will be the only GPU launched this year by saying that it will coexist with the Ampere cards. It could be true, but I reckon the thinking here is that those on the fence will decide not to wait for a 4070 that will only come out next year and just buy a 3080 or 3090 now, and therefore help NVIDIA empty inventory. But remember, Remember, AMD is launching a new generation of hardware that's chiplets-based. That means that they can possibly launch the high-end and mid-range options at the same time or very close, like they've done with chiplets-based CPUs. If AMD launches a 70-class GPU in time for the holidays, do you think NVIDIA will sit still and potentially lose millions in sales to their competitor? What Jensen says to investors is one thing, what NVIDIA actually does is another, and I wouldn't discount the possibility of us seeing a 4070 launch this year still, depending on what AMD does. One thing is for sure, things have never looked so positive for AMD. To put things in perspective, NVIDIA is projecting $5.9 billion in revenue for next quarter, while AMD is projecting $6.7 billion. That's right, AMD is making almost $1 billion more than NVIDIA in a quarter. That hasn't happened in, I don't know, 20 years. The fact that AMD has a much more varied portfolio in consoles, CPUs, FPGAs, etc. means they are less exposed to the crypto crash and makes them a much less volatile company. NVIDIA has the AI hype train behind them, but what if better ASICs come along for inference? What if the metaverse bet doesn't pay off? What if the Grace CPU fails to make an impression in a market so attached to Intel and AMD CPUs? If pricing for the 4000s remains roughly the same and ray tracing isn't selling people on upgrading, how can Jensen convince gamers that the next gen is worth buying into based on performance uplifts alone? Surely there must be an ace up his sleeve. I mentioned neural graphics in my last video on NVIDIA's metaverse strategy, and I think we will see some new gimmicky features related to that at GTC, but I doubt that will be enough to entice gamers. I can already see the memes comparing whatever gimmick NVIDIA pushes to ray tracing. So here's my predictions for the Lovelace lineup. These numbers are fairly close to what's been going around the rumor mill. I'm assuming since they've been so widely propagated by a few different sources that they are at least somewhat credible. Unfortunately, even if I wanted, I can't quote the sources as they've posted so many different numbers that it's impossible to keep track of who said what. Assuming the numbers are accurate, this puts the 4090 at around 65% to 75% faster than the 3090. So that's 4090 versus 3090. The clocks are of course a guess. Given what we've seen of 5nm, I think it would make sense for the 4070 and 4060 to reach 3 GHz. Unlike most leakers out there, I don't think the power draw will be as insane as what's been said. I think there will be an increase, but nothing as dramatic as 600 watts for the 4090 as some have suggested. Now when it comes to pricing, I do think we will see a $50 increase on the high end, maybe even $100, but something tells me that NVIDIA will have to keep the prices for the 70 and 60 classes the same as with Ampere, mostly because of AMD. We could see a $50 increase there as well, but given Jensen's comments on ASP earlier, I think that at this tier, prices will, perhaps surprisingly, remain the same. Maybe I'm underestimating the greedy nature of these companies, but to me a price increase in this segment would be a mistake at this point. But it's when we look at RDNA 3's predictions that things look really challenging for NVIDIA. So these sets of numbers are basically an amalgamation of the leaks out there. Again, I can't credit anyone in particular as there are conflicting numbers constantly being thrown around. It's hard to say if there will be a dual graphics die 7900 XTX, as I've talked about in the past, or if there's only a single graphics die 7900 XT. The number of workgroups might be different, and of course clock speeds and power draw are also a guess. I went with fairly high wattages here because I think AMD will push clocks aggressively, upwards of 3 GHz. We've seen that TSMC's 5N can deliver very high clocks if the microarchitecture is geared towards that. But what matters most here is the fact that using chiplets and being on 5N rather than 4N means that AMD will have significantly lower costs than NVIDIA in designing and manufacturing these equivalent GPUs. That means they can price their cards below NVIDIA's while being either at parity or even above in raw performance. Take the 7800 XT, which I think will be faster than the 4080 and would probably cost at least $50 less while still giving AMD higher margins than last gen. This is all speculation on my part, but I think this is the way things will go. I think the 7900 XT will be on par or faster than the 4090 and cost like $500 less, and because of the high costs of making a monolithic 4nm 600mm squared die with TSMC, NVIDIA will have a hard time reducing prices of the 4090 without a huge hit to their margins, something they said in the earnings call that they won't do. At most, you're looking at a 2.5% drop in margins. Down in the lower tiers, I could see AMD just not caring and going for the highest possible margins on the 7700 XT and 7600 XT, even if they're more expensive than NVIDIA's comparable options. In the AMD Investors Day, Lisa Su said that the company is all about the high margins now, and they know that the core AMD fan will be looking upwards in the stack anyway. Gamers buying 60 and 70 class GPUs will go NVIDIA 99% of the time regardless of performance or price. The Steam hardware survey tells us that much. And I think NVIDIA will be very aggressive with the 4060 pricing in particular. I could be wrong, but something tells me that having a must-buy card like that early next year will give NVIDIA the ramp in revenues that they need. I think the big moneymakers like the 4080 and 4090 will have a tough time competing in both value and performance with AMD's equivalents. And with the current market conditions, inflation and all that, gamers will be reluctant to spend more than $500 for an upgrade that they don't really need. So the people who do spend more than that might look at AMD as a better buy if AMD makes a good impression in the launch reviews. The RTX 2000 series had the ray tracing and DLSS novelty behind it to justify purchases. The 3000 series had crypto miners to make NVIDIA huge profits. The 4000 series will have neither, unless NVIDIA pulls another gimmick out of their hats. And in addition to that, there will be pallets of 3080s and 3090s on the used market for very attractive prices. Jensen Huang will have to be at the top of his marketing game next month in hyping up the 4090, as I suspect it's going to be a very hard sell. Declining revenues, a new generation of hardware launching in extremely rough market conditions, risky bets in unproven markets like the metaverse, constrained supply from Asia, data centers and hyperscalers with reduced investments for the foreseeable future, and the CPU strategy that is in serious risk of being dead on arrival. Things look grim for NVIDIA. Speaking of grim, most of the pundits out there are expecting a poor showing from AMD this coming Monday with their Zen 4 event. I, on the other hand, think people could be positively surprised. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, as I will be analyzing AMD's announcements in detail early next week. This video was made possible by my awesome patrons. Join my Patreon for just $1 per month and get exclusive access to the Cortex Discord server, where I frequently share exclusive bits of information. If you can't contribute financially, then please give this video a like and share it, as that really helps. Thanks for watching, and until the next one.